What's up guys, it is Sam here from Market Movers, and today I wanted to talk about the doomsday scenario for the economies, the advanced economies in Western Europe and also maybe the US and Canada as well, and that is the topic of stagflation. So stagflation is something that has been kind of mentioned very briefly in the news. It's something that economists see as a doomsday scenario, and it really does hurt ordinary people. So I was going to get into a bit about what that is, what that will mean for people, and what it is all about, and why it is so negative for the ordinary person, and just an example of when this happened before. So guys, if you do enjoy this and do learn from this, do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It does help us out an awful lot. And look, I will see you in the video. So guys, stagflation is something that we are faced with at the moment, and it is basically kind of nearly a doomsday scenario for economies. So economies, they go through cycles of booms and busts, and this is something that is happening at the moment. So you hear everyone talking about recession, and that is also very bad, but it's not the number one threat to the economies in the Western world. So the number one thing that people are concerned about is inflation at the moment, and the governments are increasing interest rates to try to bring inflation under control, unless you're living in Turkey, which are doing the complete opposite. But they're trying to bring inflation under control. But if, say, the inflation is caused by an external matter that is not controlled by the country, so therefore like energy in Europe, which is the major crisis at the moment, you can't control the cost of something that you don't produce. So if you're taking money out of the market, making things more expensive to borrow money, so there's no more cheap money on the market, this leads to decreased growth, but it also does decrease demand, and therefore brings down inflation. But what if this doesn't happen? If it doesn't go according to the script and going according to the playbook of where increasing rates brings down inflation, does increase unemployment to a degree, but brings down demand enough so that supply chains and stuff can get back on top of things that they were before COVID. This is the ideal scenario, but it may not happen. What we may be faced with is a term called stagflation. So stagflation is basically a stagnant economy with runaway inflation. So wages do not increase, employment increases, but costs still keep going up and up and up. So this really hurts the ordinary person. It's a very difficult scenario to be faced with. It's very hard on the ordinary person. That is, especially if they're unemployed, everything is getting more and more expensive. They struggle to afford food and basic necessities. And this is a scenario that has happened before. It happened in the 1970s in the oil embargo, when the US and OPEC had a bit of a standoff, and stagflation happened in the US economy in the 1970s. And it just hurts the ordinary person. If you're wealthy, you can afford to take these hits. But if you're not, then you're really going to struggle if this scenario takes hold. So this is what they want to avoid. They want to avoid a stagnant economy and runaway inflation. They want to aim for this soft landing that may never come. So stagflation is a real issue. It's a real concern. It's a doomsday thing for economists, and it is the worst way for an economy to be functioning is in a stagflation economy. So, how do they possibly avoid this? Well, it's hard to know. It's hard to know how they can necessarily mitigate stagflation. It's definitely a real risk. Hopefully the things kind of do get sorted out on a geopolitical level, and then they can kind of focus on the macro and microeconomic level. But stagflation, yeah, as I've explained it, it's a real threat to the economies. It's runaway inflation, high unemployment, no wage increases, and you have the ordinary person struggling. So I wanted to touch on what stagflation is, what it could potentially mean for you, what we're actually facing at the moment as an economy in the Western world, as growth is starting to slip away. Especially if you look at the UK, their growth rates are expected to be very, very low over the next few years, partly due to Brexit and the Euro crisis, so to speak. And the US as well had 2 negative quarters of GDP growth this year. And then growth is going to slow next year as well. And also China is reporting slower numbers as well. So all pointing that we are going to be heading towards a recession. But hopefully it doesn't end in a stagflationary recession, which is the complete and utter doomsday for economies. And then you'll end up with more money printing, and you could end up with a devaluing currency. Examples of this are Venezuela, Zimbabwe in recent times, where they've had extreme inflation, like hyperinflation, thousands of percent inflation. If we think it's bad at 10%, imagine what it is if it was 5,000%. So this is just a risk that there is at the moment, and it's out there. It's hopefully not going to happen. It's not expected to, but you have to be aware that stagflation is a real risk for the economy. So guys, and what would that mean for stocks? Stagflation is not good for stocks. Financial markets don't take well of stagflation, low growth, high inflation. Their costs go up for all companies, regardless of who you are. It won't be very, very good for stocks or cryptocurrencies that have only functioned in a low rate environment. So yeah, look, it's a bad all around rap, stagflation, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but hopefully you just have to be aware of what it is and what it is all about and what the risk is to you. So guys, if you enjoy this and learn about what this is, I will see you in the next one, and do hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It really does help us out an awful lot. Thanks guys.